Hello and welcome back to a new vlog. Today I'm on the train north from King's Cross to Edinburgh Waverley Station. It was a beautiful day for a train journey that takes 4.5 hours along the east coast of the UK with beautiful views of the Northumberland coastline. Here we are approaching the Royal Border Bridge across the River Tweed. Opened by Queen Victoria in 1850, it is a Grade 1 listed railway viaduct. The Scottish border is just north of Berwick, which has changed hands between Scotland and England many times in its history. The coastline here is wild and beautiful. Very soon, our first Scottish castle came into dramatic view. It's because of views like this that I absolutely love travelling by train. Very soon we arrived on the outskirts of Edinburgh with great views of Calton Hill and its neoclassical monuments. It was a short walk to our hotel and a much needed cup of tea. I was very pleased to see a supply of Walker's shortbread as well. We had a lovely view from the hotel room across to the Balmoral Hotel clock tower, which always runs 3 minutes fast and has done since 1902 to make sure that travellers do not miss their trains from nearby Waverley Station. We also had a wonderful view of Calton Hill, which is the headquarters for the Scottish Government. Stay around to the end because my daughter and I climbed Calton Hill to enjoy the evening sunset panoramic views of Edinburgh. Today I'm travelling with my youngest daughter, and after our tea we set off for a walk around Edinburgh. We didn't have to go far to find the real sound of Scotland. This is Parliament Square outside St Giles Cathedral on the Royal Mile. At the bottom of the Royal Mile you can just see the sea in the distance. We walked up to the castle at the top of the Royal Mile to take in the wonderful views. I'm not sure what these buildings are adjacent to the castle, but I thought they were very beautiful, especially with this Celtic cross. The castle looked amazing, but we weren't going to go in as both of us have been to the castle before. We decided that it was time to find somewhere for dinner. Back down along the Royal Mile, we found this French bistro and it looked like just the perfect place. The restaurant was part of the Institut Français in Edinburgh. The food definitely had a French flavour and we loved it. It was delicious. We watched the sun go down over the Edinburgh skyline and felt lucky to be here. The next morning we were up bright and early, having a lovely breakfast at Café Edinburgh on the Royal Mile. We set off in the direction of Dean Village through Princes Street Gardens to enjoy all that beautiful spring weather. Through the trees you can see the National Gallery of Scotland. And in the other direction you can see Waverley Station, which incidentally is the only train station in the world to be named after a book. Here you get a good view of the Victoria Memorial to Sir Walter Scott with its 287 steps to the top, but we're not doing that today. And from Princes Street you get to see the panoramic view of the city's skyline. The Royal Scots Greys Monument was surrounded by greenery and beautiful spring blossoms. I love these tulip displays, and they're flowering slightly later than in London. We left the tranquil park behind to make our way along Queensferry Street. This is a residential area with beautiful Georgian buildings on the way to Dean Village. We made our way down some steep stairs to the river at the bottom. It took us about 20 minutes to walk from the end of Princes Street to this tranquil part of Edinburgh. This is a former milling area And at one time there were no fewer than 11 working mills here, driven by the water from the Water of Leith. For me, this former milling village was a little oasis of calm in a busy capital city. And some lucky person owns this little piece of land right by the Water of Leith. I love the colour of these buildings. The whole area underwent restoration in the 1970s and they have done a fantastic job. I have been to Dean Village once before, quite a long time ago now, and the area is becoming very popular with tourists who want to get their photograph taken. Of course that does include us because we are tourists today. We walked back to the centre of Edinburgh to Cockburn Street to try and find somewhere for lunch. I had a tea and my daughter had an amazing hot chocolate in this lovely little bunny cup. They have amazing cakes here, but we decided on lunch. I had a chèvre chaud salad, very French. I think Cockburn Street is my favourite street in Edinburgh and it's usually quite lively. The buildings are all Victorian in age, but the street follows the original medieval route. We were so lucky with the weather. The beautiful blue sky really showed off the Edinburgh skyline. After lunch, I dropped my daughter back to the hotel so she could do some work, and I went to the Museum of Childhood, which is right at the end of the Royal Mile. How sweet was this needlework done by Helen Wilson in June 1889. I'm old enough to remember milk at school in these little glass bottles. I'm in complete agreement here with Sir David Attenborough. We still have attendance awards here in the UK, but not as beautiful as this one is. And here we are, 2 Fisher-Price toys that I used to own, so seeing my toys in a museum makes me feel really quite old. Here we have Dick Browner's Nature, which anyone from the Netherlands will recognise. In the UK we know it as Miffy. The wooden dolls here are the oldest in the collection. Some date to the 1700s or 1800s. When these wooden dolls were given joints, they were known as peg woodens or Dutch dolls, which I didn't know. My children are half Dutch, so I'm always interested in anything with a Dutch connection. This next cabinet is full of Scottish dolls, as you would expect. We are in Edinburgh, and many of them are wearing the traditional tartan. And these fishwife dolls became very popular from the 1800s onwards, and you can see them here in their striped petticoats. Modern dolls are also included in the collection. I was pleased to see Cindy here because I was a Cindy fan and not a Barbie. Having a doll's tea party really takes me back, and I love the china that these ones have chosen. I also spotted some Wedgwood in this glass cabinet. That's also a fine choice. And who wouldn't want this lovely wooden furniture for their doll? I particularly love this bed. Back out onto the Royal Mile once more, I made my way up to St Giles Cathedral, also known as the High Kirk of Edinburgh. This is the front entrance. It's free to get in, but they do ask for a voluntary contribution of around £5, which I think is well worth it. And I like to help out with the upkeep of these historic buildings where I can. I was very fortunate because there was actually an orchestra playing. I won't talk too much and just let you enjoy their wonderful music. This is the John Knox statue. He was the leader of the Scottish Reformation. St Giles Cathedral, or High Kirk of Edinburgh, was built in the 14th century, with the Victorians doing a lot of restoration work, adding in the stained glass windows. The Thistle Chapel was designed by Robert Lorimer and finished in 1911. It contained stalls for 16 nights. I think this is one of the most beautiful ceilings that I've ever seen. I very much enjoy looking around cathedrals, and I'm looking forward to visiting French cathedrals once we live in France. At the back of Parliament Square is the Institut Français, where we had dinner on the first night. The restaurant's name was Le Bistro, in case anybody is interested. Next, it was off to Victoria Street in Edinburgh's Old Town, which is a very, very famous road and much photographed. Built between 1829 and 1834 by Thomas Hamilton, an architect. Local sandstone was used for the building construction, and they look amazing next to this azure sky. I wanted to visit John Kay's bookstore to purchase a book for my cousin's daughter. It's a very sweet little bookstore and definitely worth a visit if you're in the area. I was meeting my cousin who lived in Edinburgh, so I went to look at the children's section to pick out a little book for her daughter. I was quite tempted with the Jane Austen section for myself, but I only had a very small suitcase with me. This side of my family are all Scottish, and I thought they would really appreciate this book. I actually wished I'd purchased this complete book of poems by Robert Burns. Some cute little Delft Dutch houses in the window. I really think I need to get something for my dog from Scotland. She is the most important person in the household after all. That is my second day in Edinburgh done, and it's been wonderful, and the weather is amazing. I made my way back to the hotel and to collect my daughter and take her out for some dinner. The next morning we went back to Café Edinburgh. The food and service here were very good. It has been a few years since I had a tatty scone, so I decided to order a tatty scone roll for breakfast. To walk off breakfast, I made my way back up the Royal Mile, which is all uphill, to the top end to visit the Writers' Museum. It's a quick cut through to Ladystairs Close, and the museum can be found in Ladystairs House. The house was built in 1662, and outside the museum you can see these quotes set into the pavement. This one was particularly poignant given the state of the world. This small historical museum is free to visit. The museum showcases 3 famous Scottish authors. This is a statue of Robert Burns, who I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Born in 1759, he is widely regarded as the national poet of Scotland. The museum houses some of the artefacts from his life, including a drinking cup, gloves, and an umbrella. At the back of this cabinet you can see a cordial glass from 1750, which is said to have belonged to Burns. And here is his rather lovely writing desk, which he used up until his death in 1796. The next room shows some artefacts from that celebrated Scottish author, Sir Walter Scott, including his pocketbook and this rather lovely blue cap. The museum has Sir Walter Scott's childhood rocking horse, which rather poignantly has one foothold slightly higher than the other, because as a child he had polio and had a permanent lameness in his right leg. You can also see his original chessboard and slippers. Here is his rather lovely inkstand. It's wonderful that so many artefacts have been bought and preserved by the museum. The museum itself is very beautiful. I love these tall windows letting in all this light. Last but not least, down in the basement are the rooms dedicated to Robert Louis Stevenson, whose famous books include Treasure Island and Jekyll and Hyde. The author was born in 1850 and died at the age of 44 in 1894. I wasn't expecting to see so many photographs, and it's interesting how photography became popular during his lifetime. Jane Austen only died 30 years before Robert Louis Stevenson was born, and it would have been wonderful to have some photography in Jane Austen's time. I particularly like this quote, "Stories are my refuge." I'm sure for many of us, books and stories are our refuge. You could hear quotes from Treasure Island in the museum, and it's making me want to sit down and read Treasure Island once more. In 1875, Stevenson went on a walking tour of France in the Loire region. A description of this trip has been translated into French, which I thought was rather nice. I really enjoyed the Writers' Museum in Edinburgh, and I think actually these small museums are lovely to support. Then it was back out onto Edinburgh's Royal Mile, which was very busy now in the sunshine. I wasn't expecting to see a couple of owls on the Royal Mile, but they looked happy enough. Later that evening, we walked to the north side of Prince's Gardens to attend my friend's photography exhibition. Apart from catching up with family before I moved to France, I was also here to see his exhibition, which celebrated the Scottish Highlands. It was a lovely evening, but I didn't film anything because I was too busy chatting to old friends. But just look at the glorious colour of these buildings in the sunset that we saw on our walk back. The following morning was our last day in Edinburgh. We decided to visit the National Portrait Gallery. The main entrance hall has an amazing frieze by William Hole in 1898. Built in the late Victorian era, the building is noted for its ornate Spanish Gothic style. You can see the exposed red sandstone in this stairwell. On the first floor is this wonderful library and print room. The library collection covers Scottish history, art history, photography and costume. Upstairs was a portrait I really wanted to see of Henriette Anne, the Duchess of Orleans from 1644 to 1670, who was the fifth daughter of Charles I. Because of the English Civil War, she was smuggled out of England to France as a small child. She married Philippe, Duke of Orleans, but sadly died young, tragically at the age of only 26. For lunch, we met my family at Amarone in Edinburgh. My daughter and I shared a pizza because we were still pretty full from breakfast. I didn't actually film this part though because it was with my family. Afterwards, we had a good walk around the back of the castle and up and down some steps just to walk off that food. Edinburgh is such a walkable city. And it was such a gorgeous evening, we decided to walk up Calton Hill, which I really recommend. It's far more accessible than the Salisbury Crags, and the views are, I think, just as good. Actually, good is a little bit of an understatement. The views were wonderful from the top. You can see the whole of Edinburgh and the mountains behind, the sea. It really is spectacular. My daughter enjoyed taking lots of photographs, and then we walked around the summit. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this vlog from beautiful Edinburgh.